morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to start learning about hot places and cold places around the world, and we might even start thinking about some of the animals that live there too. Let's have a little look at the screen. I can see a picture of a hot place and a picture of a cold place. Can you? Let's have a little look. Can you decide which one is which? Now then, I'm going to use the colours to help me here. Because on this picture, I can see a blue sky, but I can see lots and lots of white snow. That tells me that must be a cold place. On this picture here, I can see a sandy desert. And the colours I can see are yellows and orange and reds, and the sun is shining. That makes me think of a warm place. Those are warm kinds of colours, aren't they? So we've got a cold place and a hot place. Do you know what? These two places, they're both actually deserts. Normally when we think of a desert, we'd probably think of a sandy place like this one. This one's called the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert is in Africa. Here we go, here's Africa, and here is the Sahara Desert. This is where our country is, the United Kingdom. So this is how far away the Sahara Desert is. And there's the whole of Africa. Okay. This place here is Antarctica, the South Pole, right at the bottom of our world. In fact, the coldest place on our world. And even though it's covered in snow and ice, it's actually still a desert. In fact, one of the biggest deserts in the whole world. That's because it hardly ever rains in Antarctica. And where there's a place that hardly ever rains, where there's a piece of land and it hardly ever rains there, we call it a desert. Now then, let's move on to the next page. So, in our country, in the UK, which is just over here, the United Kingdom, a very, very small island, especially compared to some of the other countries in the world, we have warm summers, we have cold winters. So we get a little bit of both of the sorts of temperatures. We get cold temperatures and we get warm temperatures. Sometimes it can even be quite hot in the summer. So we get a little bit of both. There are some countries though, which are hot all of the time, all year long. They never get cold weather, they never get snow. Let's have a look at our world here. Now around the world, there is an invisible line. The invisible line goes the whole way around it. And it's called the equator. The equator. Now you can't see it, it's invisible. But all the way around, that shows it's exactly halfway around our world. So it splits our whole world in half. Now what we need to know is, around the equator, now on here you can see there is a line and that shows us roughly where the equator is. That's the hottest part of our whole world. The hottest part. So all the countries that are near the equator and all the places here on the world, they are the hottest places. And the closer you are to the equator, the hotter it will be. Countries which are really far away from the equator, they'll be cooler. But the ones that are very close are hotter. So let's have a little look at some of the hot countries close to the equator, or the hot parts of the world. Now, South America is this whole section of land here. Now this is made up of lots of different countries. South America is what we call a continent. So it's a piece of land that's made up of lots of different countries. Now, one of the countries that is near to the equator is Brazil. Brazil is a very hot country. And here is a picture of Brazil, which is in South America. So that's hot all year round. Let's look at another one. Oh, we've got an island here. Now this is an Indian island over here. It's just near India. It's called called the Maldives. Can you see that? Just over here, we've got an island. Look how close it is to the equator, so it's really hot there. Look at the beautiful beach and the palm trees. Often palm trees grow in hot places. You wouldn't be able to grow a palm tree in a cold place. They like lots of sunshine. I'd like to go to the Maldives. It looks like a nice place to go, doesn't it? Especially with that warm weather. Oh, now Africa is another continent. Let's have a look for Africa. Here we go, here's Africa. Remember, that's where the Sahara Desert is in Africa. This again is another large continent made up of lots of different countries. And the equator runs right the way through Africa. And the whole of Africa is really, really hot. And it doesn't get much rain. Not in Africa, not a lot of rain. It's a hot country. There are, however, some mountains in Africa. And if you go right to the top of them, it can get much colder there. Because the higher up you go, the colder it gets. But on the ground level, it's very, very warm in Africa. Okay, so there is a picture. Not the whole of Africa doesn't look like this. There are cities and towns in Africa too, and they're all very warm. Right, let's have a look at the next page. Oh, Malaysia. Malaysia is in Asia. Let's have a little look around here. Here's Malaysia. Okay. So there are different islands in Malaysia. Malaysia's made up of different islands, and here it is around here. And look, the equator goes right the way through. There we are, Malaysia. And Malaysia is made up, a little bit like Africa. There are cities and towns, but there are also lovely beaches. And look at these forests as well. I bet there are lots of palm trees in Malaysia too. Okay, let's turn on to the next page. Now, some countries around the world are cold all the time. They don't have sunny days. I wonder where the cold places could be. Do you remember what I said? If you're close to the equator, it gets very hot. So the cold places must be the ones that are furthest away from the equator. So right at the top here is a really cold place. This is the Arctic. You might also know it as the North Pole. Okay, I'll tell you something interesting about the North Pole. There's no land in the North Pole. Right up here, you see where it's all icy on here? No land. The North Pole is made up of ice. Ice that floats on the water. But it's so thick that you can stand on it, you can build on it. It's really, really thick ice. The problem is though, our country keeps getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and that's because of pollution. Pollution are things which spoil our whole world. Things like when you drive cars and all of the smoke that comes out of the back of them, that can cause pollution. And burning all of the rubbish that we throw away, that can cause pollution too. And we have around our world, we have a very special layer. It's called the ozone layer. And it keeps our world protected, and it makes sure it doesn't get too hot from the sun. The problem is though, all this pollution is making little holes in the ozone layer, and in those holes it means the sun can get through really strong, and it's making our whole world get too warm, and it's making the ice melt. So we've got to be really careful, boys and girls, to make sure that we don't pollute our world, and then we can protect our ozone layer and make sure that places like the North Pole and the South Pole, which we'll look at in a minute, don't start to melt. Because if they melt away, all the people that live there and all the animals that live there won't have a home anymore. We don't want that, do we? We'll talk about that later on in the year. Right, let's have a look then. So we were talking about the coldest places. So we've got the Arctic, which is at the top of the world, and the other cold place, which is actually even colder than the North Pole, is the South Pole. Do you remember we looked at that earlier and said it's one of the biggest deserts in the world because it doesn't get much rain. It doesn't get much snow either. It's just really, really, really cold there. Right, let's have a little look. Okay, now here's a picture of the North Pole and the South Pole. I wonder which one is which. There's a little clue on there to help us. There are some animals. You see the penguins? And there's a polar bear. I'm going to tell you something interesting. You might already know this, but polar bears only live in the North Pole. That's at the top here, the Arctic. Penguins don't live in the North Pole. Penguins live in the South Pole. Over here. Okay, so the South Pole, do you remember, is down here. Fact, there are lots of penguins that live in the South Pole. There are very special penguins called emperor penguins, and we'll be learning more about those in a couple of weeks. They're very, very interesting animals. Right, now then, some more facts about the South Pole. In the South Pole, do you know that in the winter time it's dark the whole time there? The whole time, because the way that our world moves around the sun, during the winter time, doesn't get any sunshine down in the South Pole. But in the summertime, it's light all the time because it's always facing the sun. Isn't that interesting? So dark all the time in the winter and light the whole time in the summer. Gosh, that would be very strange, wouldn't it? Okay, right. Now then, what I want you to do now, there's a little video that you can click on, and it's going to tell you a little bit about animals living in hot places and animals that live in cold places. It's an Andy's Wild Adventure video, so you should have the link to it on the activity. I want you to click on it and I want you to have a little watch of that, and then there's a job for you to do. The job that you're going to do afterwards, you can find it by clicking on the add button on your screen. So let's have a look. There's going to be some animals, just like this. And it says at the top here, hot countries. And there are some animals on the screen. The thing is though, there are a couple of animals which are the odd ones out. Two animals don't belong in hot countries. So I want you to have a look and see if you can decide which animals don't belong in hot countries. Okay, have a think. And then on the next page, there are more pictures of animals, but this time these are animals that belong in cold countries. However, there are two animals on the screen which don't belong in cold countries. They like to live in hot countries. So I want you to see if you can decide which animals don't belong there. When you've decided which animals don't belong there, what you're going to do is on the screen, now I can do it on here as well, on the screen you can choose the pen and you can cross out the animals that don't belong there. So let's pretend it's the penguin. There's an emperor penguin. You can, let's choose a pen, there we go, we'll have that one. You can just cross it out if you think it doesn't belong there. Okay, so there are two animals on each page which you need to cross out. And then later on today, I'm going to pop another video on and we'll have a chat to decide which were the right answers. So let's have a quick practice. I've got two animals here. I've got a reindeer and I've got an elephant. Now, do you think the reindeer belongs in a hot country or a cold country? What do you think? A reindeer lives in a cold country. Father Christmas has his reindeers in the North Pole, doesn't he? It's not an elephant then. Do you think an elephant would like it in the ice and the snow? Or do you think an elephant likes it where it's nice and warm? That's right, an elephant likes to live in hot countries. You often find elephants living in Africa and in Asia, where it's nice and warm. And they like to play in the water too, that cools them down. Okay? So you have a little look through those and you see if you can decide. All right, boys and girls, it's been lovely talking with you today. I know it's not quite the same as when you're here and we can chat together and you can ask questions, but I'm sure if you've got any questions, you can send them to me and we'll try and answer them later when we come back together. Or you could ask your grown-ups. You could even go on the internet and use Google to find your answers. All right, have a great time, boys and girls. I'll see you later.